You might ask yourself the question, why do human beings care for each other? It certainly seems there's a lot of people who don't seem to care about their fellow humans, except perhaps another person in their life, such as a wife or a family member. If aliens landed on the earth and looked around, they might misinterpret what they see. They might think that humans not only do not care about each other, but they're normally hostile to each other, given the conflicts and wars and killing they would easily see all over the world. They might even see law enforcement agencies throughout the world trying to enforce order, preventing crimes and capturing those who violently attack other human beings in a myriad of ways. Here again, they might misinterpret what they see. Or is this a misinterpretation? And on a side note, these same aliens might wonder why these human creatures seem so intent on destroying the very place they live. In other words, planet Earth. To say the least, human beings are complex creatures. Let's first consider that there are biological reasons why humans care for each other. Individually, human beings do not have a lot of power and capability to survive alone in a world that's hostile in so many ways. Accordingly, over the course of hundreds of thousands of years, humans who cared about each other and those who were cared for survived, and they were able to produce children and to teach them the importance of caring for each other. In other words, evolution did play a big role in enabling humans to care for each other. You look around the animal kingdom, and we humans are animals, you will see that all mammals care for each other too, in varying degrees. But it does depend on the species. In all cases, there is maternal care, since baby mammals are unable to care for themselves and they need care from their mother when they are young, sometimes from their fathers too, but this is a little less common. Same is true of birds, which aren't mammals. Evolution enabled humans to be cared for longer by their mothers because it takes longer for a young human to grow up as opposed to most mammals, which reach adulthood really quickly. And once grown, a lot of mammals no longer have any interest in their offspring. Not so for humans, usually. To be sure, love is an aspect of caring. When humans love someone, they want to care for them. Love, of course, is a very complex emotion. It involves a lot of factors, such as strong positive feelings for another person, intimacy and compassion, and a desire for another person's well-being. All of these emotions create a need to care for the other person. Some animals have the same kind of feelings. Anyone who's owned a pet, such as a dog or a cat, knows well that dogs and cats, too, can have a sense of love. They do. Love as well is a product of evolution, kind of, because love causes caring for others, and of course it helps ensure the continuation of the species. There are many evolutionary biologists who claim that the evolution of all living things is a fact in and of itself. In other words, evolution just happens. There's nothing behind it. This is kind of like the idea that the universe just happened. There's nothing behind it. There's no meaning and no purpose. In other words, caring for others is a result of a blind unconscious process which just happened to occur here on Earth because the conditions were just right. Nothing more to it. Some scientists, however, don't see it this way. Curiously, Alfred Russel Wallace, who proposed the theory of natural selection and evolution at exactly the same time as Darwin, the same theory at the same time, different places. They knew each other later. Alfred Wallace thought there was more to evolution than just happenstance. He couldn't explain what it was, but he was sure something was behind life on Earth and also behind the process of evolution. This was the reason he thought that human beings care for each other. Wallace was amazed by what he found and saw in natural selection and evolution. As he put it, the human brain is over-engineered because there's no evolutionary purpose for human beings to have such capabilities as the gifts of music and art and abstract reasoning. He stated that the advanced human traits of care and compassion and love could also not be explained simply by natural selection and evolution. He believed that there was a spiritual purpose behind and a spiritual force behind all of these things. He couldn't quite explain it. Mainstream scientists such as Charles Darwin disagreed and proposed a purely materialistic view of human evolution. Materialists then and now believe and suggest that matter and energy exist in the universe, and everything, including consciousness, can be explained by physical processes. There's nothing more to it. Today, this absolute viewpoint is very much in question by a lot of scientists. Some now think there are varying degrees of consciousness in all living beings. And there is the theory of panpsychism that suggests that everything in the universe, animate and inanimate, has some level of consciousness, and the universe itself has a pervading consciousness. This is the theory of panpsychism, and this theory has been around since ancient Greece. In any case, as all the world's religions developed, they embraced the idea of caring for others. If you ask many Christians what makes Christianity unique, some will tell you you should love your neighbor as yourself. I happen to agree strongly with this philosophy, but this is not what makes Christianity unique. This is a characteristic of all the world's religions. Hinduism is the oldest existing world religion. It makes care and compassion for others a duty, as we saw with the king in the reading. In fact, Hinduism promotes the idea of ahisma, or nonviolence, which mandates care and compassion for all human beings. Buddhism and all other Indian religions, such as Jainism and Sikhism, carry with them these Hindu beliefs and make it a core requirement in order to obtain eternal bliss, which is defined as moksha, nirvana, or mukti, depending on which Indian religion you're talking about. To be sure, the ideas of caring for others is strongly promoted in Judaism. In the book of Leviticus, in Hebrew scripture, which is the Old Testament, it's the same. In chapter 19, it states, "You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against the sons of your people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord." Some scholars think this passage suggests that the Jewish law, this Hebrew law, applied only to other Jews. This is hotly debated today by both Jewish and Christian scholars. That said, very clearly, Jesus believed and stated in this law applied to everybody, which is why he told the parable of the Samaritan that was our first reading. I believe it applies to everybody. Contrary to what some people in America think, Islam definitely promotes care and compassion for others. The Quran and the Hadith, which the Hadith is the sayings of Jesus, it's not scripture per se, but it's holy. Both the Quran and the Hadith call for kindness and care for vulnerable people of every kind. Compassion for Muslims should be part of everybody's daily life, including how people greet each other and how Muslims treat others, no matter what their background is. Muslims are required by Islamic law to donate to charity as much as they are able and to show mercy to those who have offended them. This is a mandatory requirement. It's important to remember that Islam was greatly influenced by Judaism and Christianity, and therefore, as it developed, it included characteristics of both. Why? Because there were Jewish and Christian communities in Arabia, and Muhammad knew of them, and so did other Arabs. This is why compassion is so important to Muslims, because they took that from Judaism and Christianity. Now, like any religion, there's a lot of exceptions to this, because human beings are the ones that practice religion, and they don't follow this a lot of the times. The book of Genesis suggests that humans were made in God's image. Most would agree that this doesn't mean that humans look like God, but some people think that's true. But rather that humans should act like God. If God is created and loving and filled with care and compassion for humanity, so too should human beings. Muslims would agree with this. While I personally do not agree with the theology of Judaism and Christianity or Islam, I absolutely agree with the call to love others and to be compassionate to others as possible. From what I can tell, these ideas are also promoted in Taoism, which is Chinese, and Confucianism, which is Chinese, and it is a religion too. There are, of course, cynics of religion. To be sure, there are those that condemn Christianity, for example, as a scourge to humanity. Friedrich Nietzsche roundly criticized Christianity. He suggested it created a slave mentality which promotes humility, meekness, and self-sacrifice to others, which he condemned and saw as a terrible roadblock to human potential. That's what Friedrich Nietzsche said. The rabid atheist Christopher Hitchens argued in his book, God is Not Great, that organized religion and Christianity in particular poison everything. I could not disagree more. Well, yes, I say. To be sure, some religions, including Christianity, have been used as excuses for heinous acts. Slavery, the subjugation of women, the Crusades, anti-Semitism, and so many wars around the world throughout the last 2,000 years have been justified by pulling passages out of Christian scripture. But this is what humans do to justify their deplorable acts against others. The command to love others as you love yourself pretty much dismisses the idea that Christianity offers a good excuse for misogyny or violent actions against other human beings. Pretty easy to see how Christianity altered the world of the Roman Empire and eventually the Western world. The idea of loving others and caring for your neighbors was an unknown concept to the Romans. Instead, Roman society promoted a limited form of caring for others, which was usually tied to social status, political ambition, or mutual obligation, rather than a universal ethic of compassion for all human beings. Roman government had social programs, but they were oriented not around humanitarian ideals, but instead on a way to ensure order or gain political support. And we know the concept of bread and circuses, which was a Roman concept, and that's what they did. It wasn't for humanitarian reasons. Families in Roman times were supposed to care for others in their family, but not beyond this. An elderly person who had no family was really in a tough and life-threatening position in the Roman Empire. This changed with the gradual influx of Christianity, and completely when Christianity became the state religion. In fact, after the empire officially became a Christian state, which was around 325, the Common Era, sponsored charities became embedded in the Roman government policies. By the 4th century, Christian organizations also established hospitals and resources that helped serve the poor beyond what the state could provide. History is filled with Christian individuals, like monks and nuns, who dedicated their lives to serving others and fulfilling the command to love others as you love yourself. Their compassion and their love became a model for how all Christians should act, and it explains why the act of giving to others in need became an integral part of a good Christian ethic. There's great examples of people who were supposedly Christian, but then perpetrated all kinds of acts of violence and cruelty and selfishness in their actions, but then they were afraid of going to hell, so what did they do? They didn't offer sacrifices to a god as the Romans would have done to save their souls. They started to give to the poor because that was the most important way to fulfill your Christian duties. I think the requirement to love others and serve others is embedded as a result in Western culture, even among people who are not religious. Think of all the hospitals in the United States. Interesting to know that 20% of all the hospitals in the United States were started and are operated now by Christian organizations. 13% of these are Catholic. Yes, I do think the Eastern religions do call for loving others and caring for people. And there are hospitals in Asia started by Buddhist and Hindu organizations, similar to those in the West. But I wonder if Asian societies as a whole internally promote care and compassion as much as the West. Some years ago, I was on an official visit to China. I was studying port infrastructure around the country. Our host was driving us between Chinese cities, and one time I was going north from Shanghai, and of course the Chinese highways are magnificent. They don't have clover leaves because they don't need them. There isn't that much traffic. So what you have is the highway, and then you have the village or the town, and there's a pull-out. You just pull out. There's no traffic light or anything. You just pull out and go onto the highway. So no clover leaves. Well, at one point we were slowed down because there was a terrible accident. There was a body lying in the road. All the villagers were in a circle with their hands behind their back, looking down at the body. There must have been 75 or 100 people staring at the body. No one was doing anything. I asked our driver, "Will someone come to help?" He said, "Yes, an ambulance will come, but person better have cash or credit card." Upon further inquiry, I discovered that in much of China, first responders demand cash or credit card up front before service is rendered. And no one in the village was willing to help this person either. This, of course, runs counter to how the situation would have been handled in Western countries. I suspect 2,000 years of Christian history have made the difference. Remember the saying you often hear from people who are not displaying care and compassion for others, even from non-religious people. You hear the expression, "Well, that's not very Christian of them." Well, that's because care and compassion for others is embedded in Christianity. It's the main event. Despite what people who are on the religious right say. At Nichols College, where I teach freshmen, I teach leadership in the fall and I teach world religions in the spring. Leadership is a required course for all freshmen. And as I tell them and we go through the syllabus, there are many factors for a good leader, such as competence and good communication, resilience and courage and accountability and all sorts of things, just to name a few. But a key characteristic I really promote is compassion. In fact, I lift it up above all the others. A leader has to be compassionate. It doesn't mean they're a pushover, but compassion doesn't mean being a pushover. Compassionate parents still discipline their kids. It means you demonstrate real care and concern for those who you are responsible for. And when you do this, any organization will perform better because the people in it know you care about them. And this includes any kind of organization. It includes nonprofits, it includes for-profit companies, it includes military organizations, any kind of organizations. When the leader cares for people, people will respond in kind, and that's true of everybody too. In the final analysis, I believe that care and compassion for others, loving your neighbor as yourself, is a key component to spirituality. In my view, I think this is supported by all the world's religions. Compassion is an absolute part of a spiritual life. I think its absence is a main reason why we see so much hate and injustice in our world today. That's what Susan was talking about, and that's what we all experience today. This, of course, is made so pervasive by the explosion of media sources, such as social media. There's probably more hate and violence than ever in the world today. Yeah, it's due to the increase in human population, but it's also due to the media sources which perpetuate hate and violence, which cause more violence in return. Think about it. Can you really think of a truly spiritual person who is filled with hate and violence? I can't. I can think of a lot of supposedly religious people who are anything but compassionate. They're religious, but they're not spiritual people. Remember, religion is so often used as an excuse for perpetuating violence, acts, and hatred. Christian nationalism, which we hear about, is but one example. Christian nationalism is a political ideology wrapping itself in a religious cloak. It is not spiritual. It is the Mother Teresas of the world who have adopted and demonstrated the command to love your neighbor as yourself. History, past and present, is filled with these type of individuals. Mother Teresa was truly a spiritual person, but she wasn't so religious, believe it or not. For 50 years, she struggled with her faith, often questioning the very existence of God. Yet she persevered in her belief in care and compassion for others. Her background, in my view, did not give her the tools to consider there are other ways to consider the sacred source of all things. She only knew about the biblical God, and it was this God she struggled with. Because of all the media sources and social media on our cell phones, we are exposed as never before to human violence in all its manifestations. Some people become so overwhelmed by this, they tell me they no longer look at the news. I understand this, but there's a way to combat and fight against this. If a person constantly looks at negative news, including violence and hatred, it can actually rewire your brain. This is the idea of neuroplasticity, which is now understood by medical science as a fact. The type of rewiring can cause a violent person to become more violent if that's what they do is look at violence all the time. The opposite is true. Each of us can actually rewire our brain to focus on love and compassion and to make yourself care more for others. If each of us practices compassion and loving others in our daily life, we can make a tiny difference in the world, and together we can all make the world a better place. So yes, limit the news you look at that's filled with violence and hatred, especially on social media. People do not need social media to stay in touch with what is happening in the world. In fact, that's a bad way to do it. Follow only mainstream media, at least most of it, which does include good things that are happening in the world. Make a morning pledge to yourself every day to find a way to be grateful for your life. If you're having trouble doing this, and yes, it can be difficult sometimes, take the time to write down all the good things in your life. That may include friends and family, and it may mean that you need to be compassionate to these people. Try to be compassionate, and maybe it'll also include a stranger as well. As you go about your day, focus on trying to greet strangers, holding a door for them, or finding a way to help them. Random acts of kindness will make you feel good, and it may have a very positive effect on the other person and make them feel better about the world around them. If someone attacks you in some way because you make a mistake, which we all do, don't return the attack. Instead, apologize in some way. Spend time in nature, right here in Cape Cod. A walk on a trail or on a beach can fill you with a sense of awe if you pay attention. Take the time each day to meditate and empty your mind of all your troubles and focus on the wonderful things in the world. There's a lot of them, really. All of these things will make you a happier person. They will help you become more caring and compassionate towards others. And in a small way, you will help change the world. And as people begin to see the type of person you are striving to be. As Elizabeth Kubler-Ross once said, "I've never met a person whose greatest need was anything other than real, unconditional love. You can find it in a simple act of kindness towards someone who needs help. There is no mistaking love. It is the common fiber of life. It is the flame that heats our soul, energizes our spirit, and supplies passion to our lives." Peace be with you.